Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and it turns out CNBC, our old buddies at CNBC, stopped by to interview Brad Garlinghouse at Ripple Swell. Let's watch some of this.
I wanted to start a discussion by talking a little bit about stablecoins. It's a very hot topic, and the market is booming. JP Morgan has estimated that in a couple of years, the market could be worth as much as $750 billion with a B. And a lot of non-crypto native players and crypto players are jumping into the fray to offer these tokens. Now, I bring this up because I know that there's the Ripple-linked RLUSD that launched last December. I'm wondering how you see RLUSD fitting into this landscape, the stablecoin landscape that's increasingly competitive.
Yeah. Look, I think the estimates around the size of the stablecoin market are actually understated. So I've seen numbers ranging from 750 billion all the way up to 3 or 4 trillion. I think when you step back and think about what problem is being solved, it's a big problem, and whether it's a corporate, whether it's individuals, making money move the way information moves today is powerful. Making it easy for people to pay each other, pay for things, cross-border. These are all very powerful things where you have trillions of dollars flowing. And so when you see markets that big, I can see a lot of capital continuing to flow to this market. As you pointed out, Ripple is launched our stablecoin just under a year ago. We just passed $1 billion market cap. So in 10 months, we're very happy with the progress. Ripple is always focused on that kind of institutional use case. So we're integrating RLUSD in our payment flows where it makes sense, where a corridor or a currency pair is more efficient to use a stablecoin than it might be to use XRP. And we want to make sure we're solving the customer problem as efficiently and as inexpensively as possible. Sometimes stablecoin is the way to do that. So I think the whole market's going to grow. Ripple, I think, has an exciting play within that. There's obviously some other very successful players, which we welcome. And I think the whole market can grow a lot. I focus a little bit less on the size of the piece we have as opposed to the overall market. If the overall market grows, I think we're going to do well.
Right. Now, could you delve a little bit more into the distribution plan for RLUSD?
So for us, the distribution plan around RLUSD is more focused on the institutional use case, on institutional collateral. We now have an asset in Ripple Prime, a prime brokerage platform where people can use RLUSD as good regulatory collateral. So there's examples where we think it'll drive demand for RLUSD that's differentiated compared to some of the other stablecoins.
Got it. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I also want to talk about regulations. Ripple's a big player on Capitol Hill. And leading up to the presidential elections, you guys donated tens of millions of dollars to the super PAC Fair Shake. And under President Donald Trump, you guys have been present on a lot of discussions on the Hill. So I'm kind of just wondering, based on what has already been achieved, the ratcheting back of regulations, the overhaul of the CFTC and the SEC, Ripple's case that was brought by the SEC being dropped. What else are you looking to achieve in the next couple of years, particularly in the lead up to the midterms?
Yeah. Liz, I'll start just by saying it never made sense to me that this became a partisan issue. That somehow the Biden administration was very hostile towards crypto. It never really kind of made sense. We as a society in the United States should embrace...
It makes sense if they're corrupt.
...new technologies that can actually put the United States at the forefront of innovation. Now, how those technologies are used is something we should, talk about and make sure they're used appropriately. Ripple's always been a kind of compliance-first company, but you're very right. Ripple leaned into supporting Fair Shake, a super PAC, and Fair Shake supported candidates on both sides of the aisle who were pro-innovation and pro-crypto because we feel like it's something the industry has been clamoring for. We want regulatory clarity. We want to make sure we are acting, but we've been asking for, give us clear rules of the road so that when we're doing things, we know we're doing them appropriately. And the Biden administration and Gary Gensler and the SEC was kind of resisting that clarity. And I think now we're seeing a very constructive engagement with government, with both Dems and Republicans, to bring forward things like the Genius Act, which already passed. providing stablecoin clarity so you can see that market grow and see the United States lead in that market. What we still haven't yet seen, which hopefully as the government opens up again, we hope, the Clarity Act is something that's being discussed to provide the clarity around what is a digital asset, what's a security, what's a commodity, and that we hope that other assets have what XRP fought for in the courts to be declared not a security, but others in the industry don't have that clarity that the XRP has.
Donald Trump had also spoken in the few...
That's what people don't realize. With no legislation, XRP is the only digital asset with legal clarity.
Months, at least, ago about creating some type of strategic crypto reserve and potentially even buying cryptocurrencies, including XRP. Have there been any discussions on that subject in the past couple of weeks, months? Has it been revisited? It seems like the issue was kind of dropped and then there hasn't really been much news there.
I haven't heard anything new about that. I mean, I think, it's an interesting dynamic because we as a society, I think, should always be keeping up with technologies. And obviously, we have a gold reserve and the hundreds of billions of dollars of gold. And if these are new stores of value that are strategic to the country, should we have a strategic crypto reserve of some kind? And this should, I think, be anchored by Bitcoin. I think that makes sense. Obviously, there's some work on that done in the spring. I haven't heard the latest on where we are as a government in implementing that.
Now,
XRP Strategic Reserve.
Shifting gears again, because it's been such a big year for Ripple, I would love to talk about the acquisitions. You guys have done about $4 billion worth of acquisitions so far. You had the Hidden Road one that was worth $1.2 billion for the prime brokerage. And you had the G Treasury. There's another north of $1 billion deal. The $200 million acquisition of the stablecoin platform. How do all these acquisitions fit into your corporate strategy, particularly under President Trump and this pro-digital asset era in the States?
So I'll start by saying I think that people still underestimate the largest economy in the world, 22% of global GDP, the United States, used to lean out on crypto, and now we're leaning in. And I think people underestimate how big a shift that is and what the impact's going to be on the crypto market overall. When I see that, and I think that people haven't quite caught up to what that's going to mean, that means that I want to see Ripple invest in that future and get ahead of where that market's going. So you're right, we have aggressively leaned in and made multiple, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. Hidden Road G Treasury being the biggest. But for us, we've always tried to be that bridge between a decentralized financial world and the centralized or traditional financial world. And Ripple's been building bridges between them. So the assets we have been buying have been on the traditional finance side so we can bring crypto-enabled solutions to that traditional financial world. G Treasury is managing literally trillions of dollars of payments for corporate treasurers, and the ability to introduce to them, here are crypto-enabled solutions that are faster, cheaper, more efficient. That's a good thing for everybody.
Ripple had explored the idea of going public in foreign markets, particularly at a time that, the regulatory climate was quite difficult in the U.S. Now a lot has changed. So now we have President Trump. He's very pro-digital assets. Again, the CFTC and the SEC have been completely overhauled. Would you consider going public in the foreign market still, or are you now more U.S. focused? Are you considering doing an IPO in the U.S.?
Yeah. So if Ripple were to prioritize going public today, we would definitely look at the U.S. markets. They're the deepest markets, the broadest markets, the most efficient markets. So I think we would prioritize that. When we were talking about that before, we actually had exchanges from other countries around the world courting us because the U.S. was so, I think, illogically hostile towards this industry. Now, that being said, going public still isn't a short-term priority for us. We always kind of keep an eye on that, and maybe at some point we will. But for now, we're focused on building. And we have the balance sheet that's allowed us to make these multi-billion-dollar acquisitions and to continue to grow the business. We've also been able to return liquidity to shareholders. This year, we've completed over $2 billion of tender offers, so we're buying shares back from our shareholders. So that's getting liquidity to some of our early investors. And so far, we feel like we're in a good place on that, but we'll obviously continue to watch and make decisions.
That's good stuff. I didn't intend on playing the whole thing, but it was worth it. Folks, as fast as the shutdown started, it's going to end. I know there's some political posturing right now. But this thing's going to be over, and I think it's probably going to be over sooner rather than later. So lock in. Now, I'm trying to decide. I'll play a little bit of this. This is Caitlin Long talking about the U.S. monetary system and how where it came from.
The euro-dollar market was born in the 1950s, and there was some discussion in the 1960s as to whether the Fed should try to get some sort of control over it. And frankly, it sounds like they all just never agreed on whether to get control over it. And it was small enough that they could just ignore it. Yeah. And then it just grew. And now it's bigger than the onshore US dollar market. So that's the history. There are a lot of US dollar transactions that never touch U.S. banks and never go through the United States, but they're using the dollar as the intermediary currency. And so there are a lot of folks who would look at the world today and say, we're not on a dollar standard, we're on a euro dollar standard, because there's more volume in U.S. dollars happening outside of the domestic U.S. market. And so who controls the euro dollar? To your point, it's the City of London. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's easy to point to why the interest rate on dollars was set under what's called LIBOR, the London Interbank Offer Rate. And the panel of LIBOR setting banks was dominated by London banks. It had the London office of JP Morgan as the sole representative of the U.S. banking market. So who controlled the most important interest rate for the U.S. dollar market? London.
JP Morgan. And that explains a lot of how we got here. I'm not going to play this, but I do want to mention this. Kathy Wood has lowered her Bitcoin price prediction by 300K because of stablecoin adoption. Let me translate. She's lowered her Bitcoin price prediction by 300K because of utility, digital assets that are actually useful. And she needs to lower it a lot more because that's what's coming, and she knows it. Michael Arrington has corrected Laura Shin. These arguments that Ripple is only worth their XRP holdings and therefore is worthless because XRP is worthless and all the people who own XRP have been duped, and lack agency requires fairly stunning amounts of cognitive dissonance to pull off. Oh man. And then Dom Kwok comes in. How can Ripple not be worth anything if it bought Hidden Road for $1 billion, G Treasury for $1 billion, several others? And I reminded everybody, everyone in this thread needs to realize she spent a decade questioning Ripple's holdings of XRP, but wrote an entire book on Ethereum and never addressed the fact that they hid the whales in the ICO. She's a plant, and now she's doing Solana too. She's a part of the VC machine. Gary Cardone piled in on what she said, and he couldn't even figure out Brad Garlinghouse's X handle. That's how smart this guy is. This is a good reminder for everybody. This is a tweet from me in June of 2021. I wonder why ex-FinTech segment global lead at MasterCard isn't worried about the SEC lawsuit. I wonder. That's Cindy Young, who came to Ripple and was at MasterCard. She was the MD of Europe, or she's managing director of Ripple from Europe. But anyway, I said, this is a reminder, the XRP army called pretty much everything you're now seeing happen. We were beat up every step of the way. Now we get to watch grown men and women, Laura Shin, weep. The fear is real and should be. Lock in. Oh yeah, it's real, all right. And then here's Stuart Alderati thanking Representative Richie for inspiring, I think it's Richie Torres, for inspiring conversation at Swell. Tech isn't and shouldn't be a partisan issue in the first place. The path forward requires industry to continue to collaborate and educate policymakers so we can get market structure over the line. Then I wanted to point this out. This is from Smoke. Bank of America presentation reveals plans to use crypto assets and blockchain technology. Here it is, Investor Day 2025. Backdrop is in place for continued elevated activity beyond 2025, tokenization and crypto adoption, distributed ledger technology, digital cash, tokenization of assets. Writing's on the wall, folks. Can you read it? Okay, we're going to go in DAIXRP.com. That's the Patreon. If you'd rather join through YouTube, click join below any of these videos. If you'd rather join through X, hit subscribe on X. We do the full video plus the extended video and no commercials. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. Here we go.